Israel, and then I want to march through some scriptures that I think are going to be very helpful in the next week or so as we watch the news on television. Then in our second session, and one other thing I want to do, yesterday I was going to do 10 of my favorite articles, and now I'm going to do 15 or 18 of my favorite articles. We monitor anywhere from 30 to 50 articles a day. And sometimes we have a busy day, and it might be 80 to 100, but usually a normal day is in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 news clips a day. And so I've got a few that I think are important, and I'm going to show those to you as we try to do this update. In the second session, we're going to, yesterday we were weathermen, and today we're going to be watchmen. And we're going to look at a number of factors that all point to the fact that we're living in the last days. Yesterday we tried to do Israel and the focus on Israel and on the agenda against the children. And today we'll carry that a step further. What I'd like for you to do is take your Bibles and turn with me to the book of Ezekiel. And that's the story of the watchman. But really I'm going to use it in two ways. Because if you have the reference there in Ezekiel 33, and you'll see where verse 4 or verse 2 says, and when he sees the sword come upon the land, he blows the trumpet and warns the people. And so the command was to make a watchman. Now, let's just flip over a couple chapters and we come to another very familiar thing. And by the way, between chapter 34 and 36, there's some messages concerning the Arab countries, Edom in particular, the descendants of Ishmael. But 36, we come back to Israel, and here God speaks of the fact that he's going to put them, he's going to give them a new heart, he's going to plant them in a new land. And all the way through this time, he says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bless you. I'm going to multiply the fruit of your labor. I'm going to put you in a desert, verse 35. This land that was desolate has become like the Garden of Eden. The waste and desolate ruined cities are become fortified, and they're inhabited. And so chapter 33, he says, you better set a watchman. Chapter 34 and 35, he says, you're going to have trouble from the descendants of Ishmael. Chapter 36, he says, I'm going to replant you again in your land. And I'm going to give you a new heart, and I'm going to make your land grow crops in the desert. I'm going to have cities that are destroyed, and they're going to be rebuilt. The area is going to be inhabited. You can see the progression. Chapter 37, probably the familiar one is the fact that it's the valley of dry bones. He said, I'm going to make you a nation. Chapter 37, verse 10, he said, I'm going to make you a great army. Verse 11, he says, I'm going to take these bones, I'm going to give life to them, I'm going to put breath in them. And then verses 15 through 18, he said, when you come back as this nation, you're not going to be two sticks, you're not going to be Judah and Israel, you're going to be one united nation. We saw that happen in 1948. Now, Ezekiel chapter 38, he talks about the fact that there's going to be a horde of nations come against him. It's going to be headed by Russia, by Persia or Iran, by Libya, Ethiopia, by Turkey. And in the meantime, verses 13, there's going to be an Arabic country stand by, Sheba Dedan. There's no doubt about who that is. That's Saudi Arabia. But the time of this invasion, verse 8, the latter years, verse 11, unwalled villages. So it's going to be in the latter years. It's going to be when they think they're at peace. And it looks like it's the last day, because when this invasion comes, it's so incredible. And then all of a sudden, God changes the tone of the thing. And he says, this army that's going to come and invade out of the north with this horde of armies, I'm convinced it's Russia. He calls it Rosh, Meshach, Tubal. You'll see that all of a sudden he says, they come against my land, not just Israel's land. Yesterday I tried to prove that it was Israel's land. It was their Temple Mount. Jerusalem is theirs. And now God says, no, you're coming against my land. And so when they come, verse 18, it says that the Lord comes in his fury, and there's going to be a great shaking in the land of Israel. I'm going to say that's an earthquake, verse 19. Next, verse 21, there's going to be mutiny. This collection of armies are not going to get along. It's a fragile coalition. Verse 22, he's going to bring a pestilence, a disease against them. He's going to rain, flood them. There's going to be great hailstones. There's going to be fire. There's going to be brimstone. Verse 23, thus I will magnify myself and sanctify myself. I will be known in the eyes of many nations, and they shall know that I am the Lord. I think Israel always thinks they can defend themselves. And when they left Egypt, they couldn't have done it without God's help. It was a miracle. When they left Babylon, they couldn't do it without God's help. And when they preserve this time, they can't do it without God's help. I pray that this will help turn them to Jesus as the Messiah. Chapter 39, this battle gets so bad that when in the midst of all this mess, verse 7, he talks about pollution of his holy name, and then pollution on the earth. And he speaks about something that's going to be so bad that as they burn the weapons, it's going to be 7 years in doing that. But there's also going to be a contamination. I personally think that contamination is going to be nuclear. That's my interpretation. You can have another one, but I see too many things in regards to nuclear. And by the time you get to chapter 40, now we're in the millennial kingdom. So I would say that chapters 36, we watch God fulfill it as he brought Israel back to the area, to the land. Chapter 37, he allowed them to become a nation, a great army, crops are growing in the desert. Chapter 38, an army seeks after them in the latter years. A united army comes against them. They've signed a peace treaty because it said that they're at peace, they have unwalled villages, and then something destroys that fragile peace. And it takes God to save them. Now, go with me to Revelation chapters 2 and 3. So we march through Ezekiel. By the time I'm done, you say, wow, this is so simple, I could do your job, because it's chronological. When you come to chapter 1 of Revelation, verse 19, here's the outline. Write the things which thou hast seen. That's past tense. That's chapter 1. He sees God in his glory in the midst of 7 golden candlesticks. He sees things that are in the past. I think it's the power of God, the majesty of God, even in recording the Gospels. Okay, the things which are, the things that are current. I think that's the church age. And then the things which will be hereafter. That's future. So Revelation looks at the past, chapter 1, the present, chapter 2 and 3. The future is going to be chapter 4. Now, how do we know that? Well, chapter 1 describes him in his glory. We saw that in the Gospels. Heaven opened and said, this is my beloved Son in whom we are well pleased. We saw him on the Mount of Transfiguration. You come to chapter 2 and 3, you have the 7 churches, more than 7 churches, but they were typical. They give this incredible message. And when you come to the last church, we're going to talk about that in more detail in our next session. The last church was apostate. God's going to spit it out of it. Can you imagine God vomiting? It's so repulsive, God to vomit. When I show you some of the clips today of churches, I think God has every right to vomit. And then when you end that church age, and let me also say this, between chapter 1 and chapter 3, 25 times he mentions the church on the earth. Chapter 4, there's the invitation, come up here, and John sees a scene in heaven and a voice of a trumpet talking with him. I think it's a picture of the rapture. From that chapter 6, after we're into heaven, from 6 all the way to 19, no mention, not a single mention of the church on the earth. That's why they think the church is gone during the tribulation. So we come to chapter 3, that's the church age. We come to chapter 4, verse 1. I know I've told you this before, but where it says, after this I looked, and behold, a door was open in heaven. The first voice that I heard was it were of a trumpet talking with me, which said, come up here, I will show thee things which should be hereafter. The first word and the last word of chapter 4 is really the word hereafter, and it matches exactly with chapter 1:19. So that's where I think that third division begins. So chapter 1, the past glory of God. Chapter 2 and 3, the church age. Chapter 4, the rapture of the church. Then chapter 4 and 5, it's the scene in heaven. And heaven sings praises to God the Father, set their crowns at his feet. And then they sing praises. They look for one to open the scroll. And they can't find anyone. They weep until they find one, and he's the Lamb who had been crucified. I have an idea who that might be. And not only that, he had the power to come alive from the dead, and he had 7 eyes and 7 spirits of God, and then all heaven begins to worship him. It's got to be Jesus Christ. And when they finish singing songs to him, chapter 6, verse 1, the Lamb opens the first seal. And now the Antichrist comes. And then we have all the hideous things of the tribulation on our chart. That's that tribulation period of time. So again, the rapture doesn't bring about the tribulation, but instead a peace treaty and the presence of the Antichrist brings it about. And I think that's a very important thing. By the way, as I look at this, isn't it interesting that here's the earth, and the earth is preparing for war, and heaven is preparing for a wedding. Now, I don't know about you, but you got to decide between preparing for a war or preparing for a wedding. I'm going to go with a wedding. And I look at the earth, and they're prepared for war. And I look at the church, and we should be preparing for a wedding. Now, when we come to chapter 6 through 19, I think that's the tribulation. Okay, and then we come to chapter 19. Verse 11, I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on it was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness doth he judge and make war. And now we see him come, and we know who this is. Verse 16, and he hath on his vestures and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And when he comes, chapter 19, verses 7 through 19, that's the revelation of Christ when he comes back to the earth and splits the mountain in two. And then we have Satan and the beast thrown into the bottomless pit, there to be joined with the devil. And then we have the millennial kingdom. Some people, preterist point of view, believe that everything in Revelation was written, it was fulfilled in 50 to 70 AD. If so, when was the 1,000-year period when the devil was bound? If he was bound, he had a cousin, because it sure didn't seem like there was any peaceful time. There was a lot of persecution during that time. And when you come to chapter 20, verse 7, when the 1,000 years are ended, Satan shall be loosed out of the prison. He'll go out to deceive the nations, which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together. And so now he has one last battle against God. Here's what I'm saying. Revelation 33, Ezekiel 33 through 40, almost chronological. It's our lifetime. Revelation, chapter 2 and 3 is where we are right now. Chapter 4 is the next moment. It's the rapture. Chapter 6 through 19, the tribulation. Chapter 19, Christ comes back with his bride to defeat the Antichrist, to bind Satan. Chapter 20, one last time, the world can choose between God and the devil. And so I really think that if we look at the Bible, we see that it's laid out very well so that we can understand some of these things. Now, the other things that I'd like to show you that I think are important, some scriptures, and then we're going to go to the current events. In Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3, it said this, that they're going to say peace and safety, and when they think they have peace and safety, all of a sudden there's sudden destruction. We've just been through that. Luke chapter 20. It says, when the armies surround Israel, it wasn't fulfilled in Jesus' day. That was one army. That was the Roman army. The only army was the Roman army. And now look today at how many armies are coming against Israel. And so he says, lift up your head, your redemption draws near. Another contrast I want to point out is, this past Friday, the mosques were packed. Many mosques, they couldn't put everybody in. Isn't it amazing that the mosques might be packed and the churches ought to be full too, but they're not? Why? Do they believe their false message more than we believe our true message? I would say it seems like this ought to be a time when every church is talking about how God's word is being fulfilled in a wonderful way. I want to take another passage, Zechariah chapter 12. And in Zechariah chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, it talks about there's a time when the whole world focuses on Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is this burdensome stone. There's trouble there. It's a cup of trembling. All the nations are going to turn against it. You see, I believe that by the time it's done, there's going to be some retaliation that might take place, could take place, and every nation is going to turn against it, including America. Because why? Because the support for Israel is so fragile. Maybe it's if they decide to go too far as they retaliate right now. And someone said, it's not really retaliation. They have every right to do it. I agree with that. But I think that the world will view it a very different way. Okay, so those are a few things. And then the Bible also says that when Christ comes to set up his kingdom, it's going to be a time when there's a 10-nation federation. And by the time we're done, I'm hoping to show you where that fits into our whole scenario with this. Okay, so with that little introduction, I want to do my favorite articles. And I don't think, Mark, I don't think they can read the headlines anyway, can they? No, okay. So let me just go through them quickly. Iran builds an airport in southern Lebanon. You might have seen the news overnight. The airport in Lebanon that was just being constructed in the last 30 days, it's now not capable of landing a plane. Yeah, special forces, both Israel and America. Israel acknowledges that they also destroyed 2 airports in Syria. The Iran flight on its way had to be diverted because it couldn't land there. That's how bad the airport was destroyed. Qatar, an amazing article that the leaders of Hamas are living in luxury in Qatar. And they're the ones who are saying, we need a jihad, we need a holy war. These guys are sitting in, if you see the picture and see the palace he's living in, unbelievable wealth. Where did that wealth come from? Well, unfortunately, as people dig deeper, it looks like in the last 3 or 4 years, the United States has given somewhere close to $25 billion in aid to the Palestinians. Maybe it went for humanitarian aid, but maybe it didn't. Senior Hamas official says this: the October 7th attack was planned for 2 years. Only a handful of people knew about it, and he gives thanks to Iran and to Russia. Those are his words. Global Day of Jihad on Friday. Here's what they promise. I mean, every speaker, I have the written record of 4, every speaker said this is only the beginning of jihad. One of the Hamas militants that was taken captive just in the last couple of days, on him there are documents that show detailed maps of cities throughout the whole land of Israel. Detailed cities showing side streets and all this. Palestinian state, most reliable solution to the conflict with Israel. Russia says, here's the way to end the war right now. A 2-nation solution, Russia. Here's a great article. Gaza war exposes Russia's true colors. Wow. This one, written 2 days before the war broke out. President Biden's hostility to Israel. And they go on to talk about 22 distinct points where the White House, this current White House, has really thumbed their nose at Israel and just belittled them in every possible way. Abbas says, Israel is digging tunnels under the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We fear that they're going to do something to try to take over this region. Yeah, well, I can tell you who dug the tunnels there. The Palestinians are like moles. And so if there's tunnels under the Al-Aqsa Mosque, it's that Israel doesn't want that piece of property where the mosque is. They want the one where the Holy of Holies is. Again, Iran is less than 2 weeks away from having a reliable nuclear bomb. I think I used this headline the other day. Putin warns that when Russia nukes America, there's no chance of survival. That was October the 5th, by the way, if you're interested in that article. Ted Cruz, vast Iranian influence that operates at the very top of the Biden administration. Iran, they now brag that they helped plot the war over Israel. Hezbollah, the Muslim world must condemn those who normalize ties with Israel and seek for peace. October the 11th, get ready. The U.S. is going to war in the Middle East. And they show a picture of the ship, they show some fighter planes, and they begin to talk about special operations that are there now. Let's see. Okay, here's another one, October the 13th. Will Israel soon fulfill prophecy and turn Damascus into a powder rebel? Yeah, this is in the Middle East that this article is coming up. And then this one is a little bit older. It comes from the recent proceedings about 3 weeks ago. The European Union chief calls for global digital IDs. And the new UN body, to govern artificial intelligence. In the second session, you'll see why they want this. And she says that the future is digital, and no one argues with that. But she's talking about the fact that we need to go. We need to go instead to regional passports and regional IDs. We have to go to a global one. And she says not only driver's license, passports, IDs, but even currency needs to go digital. Look at this. 3 weeks ago, Russia's defense minister visits Tehran for talks on boosting military cooperation. That's 3 weeks before the war went. Oh, this one's classic. In an unprecedented move, Iran bars 1 out of 3 UN inspectors. Now, in the article, it talks about how the levels that were set for them, they're 18 times over the levels. So if you think that's for peaceful purposes, that's just ridiculous. And yet no one blows the whistle on them. So what good is it to have an agreement? And they talk about the fact they were supposed to have a stockpile of I think it's about 200 pounds. Okay, we know they have at least 8,300 pounds. When an inspector comes, they've never turned on the cameras so that the inspection can be done via video camera. And 1 out of 3 inspectors, they don't allow in. In the last 90 days, no inspector has seen the nuclear site. I don't know about you, but I would say some monkey business is going on. One more article, it'll be more important later, BRICS, the 6 countries of the BRICS. It's interesting, and I had Mark just look up the program. I've already forgotten the numbers, but I know it's the week of August the 24th, and we'll try to tell you a little bit later, but what's incredible is BRICS. And so we're looking at Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Saudi and South Africa. Okay, just in the last 4 weeks, they've invited Saudi Arabia Argentina, Egypt, Iran, Ethiopia, and the United Arab Emirates to join them. They also show the map, and in that program you'll see it. We show the map where Russia has almost completely taken over Africa, and China's almost completely taken over South America. I'm talking in terms of investment. Russia has armed 3/4 of Africa. China now has mineral rights, and I would say 80% of South America. So if you don't think that these people have a design on taking over the world, wow, we're living in a hole. Somehow we think these things are going to go away, and while we're sidetracked, well, plenty is going on. Okay, now I'm going to go to the PowerPoint, and so here's an update. I think this is really important. October the 7th, Iran Parliament, when they heard that the war had broken out, you can see the Parliament here, they went into a cheer, and together, united, here's what they cheered. The cheer, death to Israel, death to America. Now this takes place a day after the war breaks out. Let me tell you, if you think we're going to escape this war totally, it's just not true. For the last month or 6 weeks, I've been told by people in Israel that they say, do you know that you have more than 50 Iranian terrorists in your country? We've tracked them as far as America. And now some are saying that we probably have 3 times that many. Iraq just bragged that they have a number of terrorist cells in America that are across the southern border. And so I really think that in many ways, this might be why we don't find American Bible prophecy. I wonder if we're not taken out, we're not destroyed sometime in terms of all this. It really is a sad day because we have not paid attention for what is taking place. Here's another one that I think is quite unique. This takes place in Europe. And these are ladies, Middle Eastern ladies, and we'll just they speak English, and you'll see what they're doing.
It's outrageous. This is fucking outrageous.
What's outrageous?
You.
Why don't you do something for Palestine? Why don't you do it?
This is for Palestine. Who the hell is Palestine?
Let those children, it's innocent people.
Okay, what about the children in Palestine?
Doesn't mean
They were upset. They live in London, and there was notices, these are missing Israelis from the war. And she said, how come no one's upset about the missing Palestinian children? Okay, and so overnight, I'm not going to show you the clips. You'll see it on the news. France had chaos. New Zealand had chaos. Australia had chaos. Central Park had chaos. 300 universities are now, there's a person who studied this, 300 universities are giving funding to a disguised name for the Palestinian Authority organization. 300 of our universities. Unbelievable, isn't it? So the sympathy of the world certainly is different than we would expect. This is quite a thing. October the 13th, So we're talking Friday. And if you remember yesterday, among the things I showed was the clip where the United States bragged that if Russia went into the Ukraine, then they would blow up the gas line. And remember, they said, well, how are you going to do that? And they said, well, we can do it. And both President Biden and his top assistant said, believe me, we can do it. And they did. No one, I mean, even Europe says, we know who did it. Some of the countries are not too happy. And among those is Germany, because that's how Germany gets gas. And so they say, there's no way we can survive the winter without gas. Okay, well, here's the deal. Remember that somehow or another, part of this whole negotiation was that the gas field, offshore gas fields that are huge, some of those in the north part are going to be given not just to Lebanon, no, to Hezbollah. Why would we give them, why would you give them to anybody? Next, why would you give them to Hezbollah? They're an enemy. They're a terrorist organization. And so now this guy says, if Lebanon does not find gas in Block 9, Hezbollah blames Israel. So they got a gift. I don't know that they're smart enough to find the gas. But yeah, it's going to be trouble. And America's going to get in trouble because we're the ones that blew up the line, and we're the ones that negotiated, okay, knock this off, and we're going to give you the gas fields. I don't know about you, but don't you wish some rich Uncle Sam would give you gas fields that are the biggest in the world? Unbelievable. All right. Another paradox. This is in Europe. And I'll let the man introduce himself.
I come to you today as a transgender woman, as a queer woman, as a member of the LGBTQ community, and I come to you today to denounce the duplicitous and divisive propaganda spread by the occupation regime. Them tell it I should support the occupation. I should support the settlers. I should support the apartheid regime, and I should oppose the resistance of Palestinians. And why? Because of the allegedly LGBTQ-friendly policies of the Zionist government and the supposed enmity of Muslims and the Palestinian people. But I am here to tell you that is a bald-faced lie. And it doesn't matter how many times the politicians and the talking heads repeat it or how cleverly they tell it. It is a lie. I have no friends in the Zionist regime. I have no friends among the settlers. I have no friends in the White House, the halls of Congress, the chambers of the Supreme Court, or the corporate boardrooms where exploitation is turned into profit through the malign sorcery of capitalism. And there is not one enemy of mine among the Palestinian people fighting for their freedom. My enemies, the enemies of the LGBTQ people, are right here in these United States. They say that Palestinians are my enemy, but that's a lie.
Well, let him rant and rave. The minimum penalty for being homosexual is 10 years. That's what the Palestinian authorities say, minimum. I don't even know what they do to a treasure. Wow, we're living in unusual times. Okay, quickly you read the screen and you'll see where China fits into this.
始终是中东问题的核心，是当今世界不断被撕开的伤痕。这一问题的根源在于巴勒斯坦独立建国的夙愿迟迟未能实现，在于巴勒斯坦人民遭受的历史不公一直没有能够得到纠正。以色列有建国的权利，巴勒斯坦同样有建国的权利。以色列人得到了生存的保障，巴勒斯坦人的生存谁来关心？以色列的民族已经不在世界上颠沛流离，巴勒斯坦民族何时才能重返家园？这个世界存在各种不公，而对巴勒斯坦的不公已经延宕了大半个世纪，承接了几代人的痛苦，不能再继续下去了。
Unbelievable. They make it sound like Israel ran the Palestinians out. The Palestinians didn't exist until 1900. I mean, they're an invented people. They've never had a land. How can you run them out if they've never had a land? Hamas doesn't have a land. They're a terrorist organization. Hezbollah doesn't have a land. The Taliban doesn't have a land. These are terrorist organizations. They harbor in hotels and hospitals and schools, any place they can get free rent. China clearly states their position. They're with a Palestinian point of view. They're anti-Israel. And so this just shows their thinking. You see, the worldview and the world set that people have is so important. When you come to this, it's going to be even more so, because China, in their mind, says, okay, Israel is the ones that's forcing out the Palestinians. If they have that point of view, what could they say about Taiwan? He would violate his own rules if you look at Taiwan. Well, our time is almost gone on this, but look at this. A big blow to Germany, who signed a major contract with Qatar. And so Qatar says, okay, if the bombing of Gaza doesn't stop, we will stop the gas supply to the world. Oh, now we're going to threaten the world. So he says they're going to threaten the world, and Germany's throwing a fit because they're the ones that had their gas destroyed by the United States with a Russian line. Then they thought they were going to get it from Hezbollah. Hezbollah says, we can't figure out, we're going to have to hire consultants. I suggest they hire Israeli consultants, because Israel had the gas field ready to go a year ago. Lebanon has made no progress. Hezbollah wouldn't know how to, the only thing they know how to do is light gas on fire. So here's Qatar, and they're going to threaten the gas supply for the whole world. By the way, Iraq said the same thing. Okay, they're threatening no oil. Okay, then don't sell us oil. Maybe the United States ought to start doing oil again, because we have an abundance of it, and we could sure sell it and do something. This was just on Friday. Here's another one. Okay, as Israel besieges Gaza, and Egypt is concerned, this is the Washington Post. Now, I want you to look at this area, because if this is about 9 miles wide, so this is a strip less than 20, this is probably 9-10 miles, and let's blow that up a little bit, because I want you to see that out of Gaza, there's a southern border that links Gaza to Egypt. Here's what's telling. Egypt has said, we don't want a single person, a single refugee. We don't want one. They will be arrested if they set 1 foot from Gaza into Egypt. Now, why would they do that? You see, they're going to protect their southern border. And isn't it amazing that our southern border, way bigger than that, way more exposed than that, with thousands of people lined up to come across, and we're not protecting ours. But Egypt says, we're afraid that there could be a terrorist that would come. And so they don't want a single settler. It's just ironic that America, we should have open borders and allow terrorists in. And even Egypt says, yeah, no, we don't want anyone coming across the border. Okay, that's kind of our little update. And in our next session, we're planning to change. But hopefully, we gained a couple things. Number one, we saw that Ezekiel 33 through 40 is laid out. We're living right in the time of that. Revelation chapter 2, 3, church age now. Next event, rapture. Then the tribulation. During that time, Russia comes down. We're watching this take place before our very eyes. Father, I come to you. I thank you that we're guided by the word of God. What a comfort it is. The Bible says that your word is a lamp unto our feet and a guide to our life. And so, Father, we thank you for that. Father, help us to take this information and to dispel fear in ourselves first, and then to win others